Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Megan, Jen, and our alumni for joining us today and for such a great conversation. So thank you, and welcome, Donneil, and thank you, Viral, for joining me and to talk about tips about housing. Such an interesting question for those people that are maybe planning to move to Victoria. So Viral, are you going to share your PowerPoint or do you want me to share the PowerPoint before we formally start the session? Perfect. Thank you so much. So I know some of you have been with us for a few hours now, so you are very familiar with Zoom. If you just log in, I just want to share with you how we are going to communicate today. So the first one is about the chat. And as Megan said, we really want to get to know you. So if you would like to share in the chat, maybe your name and the city where you are joining us today from. Myself, I'm in Victoria. Maybe share with us what time is where you are, because right now we are in Victoria, BC. We have been in this open house since 6:30 a.m. So that was a long time ago. Maybe it was your morning, your evening, or your afternoon, and now it's currently 2 p.m. in Victoria, BC. Thank you. I see people sharing information with us. So we have Valeria, Uruguay, 6 p.m. We have Gonzalo, he's in Chile, 5 p.m. Thank you so much. We have Kathy from Peru, 4 p.m. We have a lot of people from South America. And maybe if the people from South America haven't noticed yet, I'm from Colombia. So welcome everyone. We have also people from Duncan, BC, 2 p.m., Nigeria, 10 p.m. It's almost time to go to bed. Thank you so much, everybody. Oh my goodness. We have Jalova from Turkey, it's midnight. Thank you so much for being with us today. And Milagros from Peru, thank you so much for sharing that information. Now, before Arroyo Roads, before every session, we do a land acknowledgement. Arroyo Roads University, we acknowledge that we live, and sorry, Viral, if you want, next slide. Oh, yeah, the land acknowledgement. Arroyo Roads University acknowledges that the campus is located on the traditional lands of the Esquimalt and the Songhees people, the families and their ancestors. It is with gratitude that we now learn and work here, where the past, present, and future of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, faculty, and staff come together. So welcome everyone to our lands in Victoria and of course lands at Royal Roads University. Today is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Donneil and Viral. They currently are working in student services and they're going to be sharing some information about housing. Some tips and tricks that might be make smoother your transition once you move to Victoria. So Viral and Donneil, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. Just making sure that everyone can hear me. Yes, okay, perfect. Awesome. So my name is Donneil McNabb. I am currently, before we proceed, I'll just give myself an opportunity to introduce myself and also Viral before we go. My name is Donneil McNabb. I am the Student Engagement Associate here at Royal University. So I specifically work in the Student Engagement Department, which is a subdivision of Student Services. I have been working at Royal Rose for approximately 2 years now. And I'm also a recent graduate from the Masters of Arts in Tourism Management. So yeah, when you're asking questions, if you have any questions regarding the student experience or my experience as a student engagement associate, please do feel free to ask, and I'll try to weave in some of my experiences as I go along as well. And I'll turn it over to Viral to introduce himself before we start.
Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome. My name is Viral Mangakia. I am a student engagement coordinator in student services as well as an immigration advisor on campus. I started my journey in 2013, graduated in Master of Global Management program, and working with the student services since 2014. So it's been 6 wonderful years. I have an amazing experience. But let's get into the housing information session. I know you are waiting for this info, and I will hand it over to Donneil.
Awesome, thanks, Viral. May I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So today we'll be sharing some general information with you all. And what this session will provide is basic information on renting a place in Canada. Before I proceed, I will say that this session can be pretty much relevant to anybody, whether you're a domestic student or relocating from another province, or if you're an international student. We try as much as possible to cover all bases. But again, if you require clarification on anything as I go along or as Viral speaks, please do feel free to type it in the chat and our moderator will let us know. So if you will be attending Royal Roads as a full-time on-campus student and you'll be here in Canada, you definitely want to be looking for housing for the duration of your studies. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the house that you get when you just come to Canada is one you have to stay in for the entire duration of your studies, but you want to be thinking along those lines because we do not have a permanent full-time housing on campus for students. And currently it is closed due to COVID-19 restrictions. So you want to be keeping that in mind, especially if you're going to be starting anytime soon. If you do, I will tell you a bit more about this later on, but definitely if you're thinking that that first place that you find isn't necessarily where you want to be staying for the full duration of your studies, you want to make sure that you know whether it's a month to month or if it's a lease that you're going to be doing in that space. It's very important if you're thinking it's going to be short term. Students are also responsible for finding their own accommodation. So we aren't necessarily the ones who will be finding accommodation for you. We do provide the resources, but we cannot represent you when contacting your landlords. So any exchange that's going on between you and a landlord, it has to be you. We can't be the middle person for you, but we can definitely offer resources. And if you come across any roadblocks or if there's something you're uncertain about, you can definitely let us know and we'll of course assist you. We do also have housing workshops that we host from time to time. We try as much as possible to align them with our international students orientation so that, because we know that students who are attending the orientation are most likely students who are going to be searching for housing at some point in time in and around that period. So we try to align it, but of course it may come before or after you're searching for housing. If that is the case, definitely reach out and let us know and we can provide some one-on-one assistance. There's always an opportunity to book one-on-one sessions. But also just want to let you know that we are not experts. I mean, we have been in this business for some time, so we kind of know a bit of how it works, and most of us have been through the process ourselves, but we do still say that, if you require additional help, we ask that you seek professional help. So for example, a lot of housing or property management companies, they do tend to have relocation services, or you have independent relocation services. And those individuals, that is their job, that is their duty to help you find places. So that is a service that you can offer, you can manage to do, then definitely you want to be doing that service so you can have all the details and all the help that you need prior to finding housing. Okay. There we go. So this is just a little bit of roadmap. It's a visual of how your process will go as an international student if you are coming to Canada and you're seeking housing. So you want to start looking for housing as soon as you get your letter of admission. Now, of course, it won't necessarily mean that when you get your letter of admission, you're going to be starting soon, but you want to make sure that you know all the facts. You want to have all those details well in advance, so you can take a look just to have an idea of what the rent is going to be like, cost of living. You want to know these things well in advance. You don't want to wait until the last minute to be researching these things. So once you get that letter of admission and you're sure you're going to be coming, start doing your research so you can have an idea of what you're going into. We do, as I mentioned, we do have resources to help you along the way. So we do have our international arrival guide. I'll tell you a bit more about that later in the presentation, but it does provide useful information for you regarding housing and also outside of housing. So it will tell you a bit about, for example, organizations that you can connect with when you just move to Victoria or Canada. It will tell you about, for example, Colwood and Langford. So those are some of the cities that are close by. So we do have a little blurb about those areas as well that you can find in that area. And just a lot of useful information that can help you make that transition a bit easier. So definitely you want to be using those resources. You also want to make sure that you're reading the BC Housing Tenancy Act and all its associated information and details. and completing that housing course. So that gives you all the information that you need. If you go through the act pretty much tells you what your responsibilities are as a tenant and what the responsibilities are of your landlord. So you definitely want to make sure you know that going into that agreement. So take the time and go through all of these documents that you can find online, and definitely make sure that you're well informed, so you're making informed decisions as you go through that housing process. Once you know all the details you need to know and you find somewhere that you would like, you want to make sure that you're finalizing the place to stay. Now, I know it can be a bit complicated trying to find housing from a far distance when you can't see it, but a lot of places have gotten quite creative and they do have virtual tours. For example, the first place I stayed when I came here as a student was a basement suite. I saw pictures online, but that was not sufficient for me. So I did do a Skype call with my landlord, and that was an opportunity for her to get to know me a bit better, for me to get to know her a bit better, and just to know that it was a legitimate post. So you have lots of creative ways that you can connect with property managers or landlords prior to coming, so that you can finalize that process before you get here. Now, in the past, it would have been great because we would have our temporary housing on campus that students would typically stay, say, for about 2 weeks, and you can use those 2 weeks to find housing in person. But of course, changing dynamics, that's not the case right now, even though we do hope to get to that level again someday. But you want to make sure that you're finalizing that permanent place. If you are keen on seeing places before you rent, then you can definitely get something short term. We have lots of hotels in the area. We have Airbnbs. So you can make use of those and spend a week or two, and that can give you some time to see places, but definitely have that list before so you're not staying in these places for too long. And whether you get a chance to finalize or not, then of course you're ready to fly, and then hopefully you'll get to see us at some point in time once you arrive in Canada. Thanks, Viral. Alrighty, so you have some resources that, again, you can use. We have lots of resources that you can use when finding housing here. So again, if you definitely utilize those, it should make your process a tad easier. If you go to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation website, they do have a range of resources that you can use in your process of searching for housing. So what you can find in this is a bit about renting in Canada. So what newcomers need to know. It also tells you a bit about signing a lease. That is very important that you know how to sign a lease, what's going to be in that lease, how to keep your home in good condition. That is very important. You want to make sure that you try as best as possible to leave it how you found it. Now, we know sometimes things will happen, and of course, if anything breaks or anything happens, you want to inform your landlord or your property manager as soon as possible so they can address it. Because if you do give a damage deposit and something is not in good condition the way it was when you arrived, it's highly likely that your ability to get your damage deposit will be impacted. So you definitely want to make sure that you keep things in good condition. It tells you a bit about checking out a home or an apartment, as I had mentioned earlier, about finding somewhere to stay and seeing that place. It depends on what's most comfortable to you. And of course, also how to find and rent a home if you have a large family. We know that not everyone who comes here is coming by themselves. Some persons do relocate with spouses, children. So definitely we want to make sure that you have those details so you can find somewhere appropriate, because a lot of the student-friendly houses or housing options that you will see are typically for one person, but that isn't to say there aren't options. There are lots of places that are typically for rent, so it just tells you how to go about finding those options instead. And let me see here. Okay, so there we go. I've just included the link to that website so you guys can save it and take a look at it later on. Alrighty, next slide. Thanks, Viral. Okay, so we have our international student pre-arrival guide as well that I had mentioned earlier, and it has a lot of details. But regarding finding a home, you will find things such as on-campus housing. So I had mentioned that earlier as well. Hopefully, if anyone just joined the room, we'll probably have to repeat. So we do typically have on-campus housing, but it is temporary housing. It is not permanent housing for the duration of your studies. Students typically stay for about 2 to 3 weeks while they find housing, but that is not an option at this time, but we will definitely let it be known when that changes. It tells you a bit about private houses and apartments, room rentals, shared houses, where you can find online rentals. We do have a list of places that you can go to find listings. It tells you a bit about common housing terminology, such as damage deposits and other things that you need to know. Again, your rights as a tenant, you want to make sure you know your rights. prior to staying somewhere, so that your rights aren't being abused. Knowledge is power. So if you know, then you can definitely do something about it. And then it also tells you a bit about the Canada Homestay Network, and we will tell you a bit more about that in detail later in the presentation. But this is just one of your options of places to stay while you are in Canada. Next slide. Okay. So we do have quite a few options for housing in Canada. I have mentioned some of these along the way, but just to give a bit more details. So many of you may be familiar with the concept of apartments, but if you're not, simply what it is a building with multiple units, most times multiple floors, and you can rent a unit. You have the option of either renting a unit on your own, or you can share that unit. It is entirely up to you. It may be more cost effective to share that unit. So for example, if you get a 2-bedroom apartment, it may be easier having a housemate and you guys split all the costs down the middle, so half and half. It may be cheaper that way. This also applies if you're getting a house. You can get a house and share that house. So if you're getting a house with multiple bedrooms, you can get whether it be your classmates or schoolmates. Sometimes you will find listings of persons trying to sublet, so essentially a stranger. But definitely, if you're not comfortable with that, feel free not to do that option. There are many options that are available to you. You can also do a room in a house, which kind of aligns with what I just said. So it's an owner's residence. This is what I did as a student when I just came here. Had a landlord. I lived in her basement suite along with another student. So you can get a room in an owner's residence, but please do note that if you do this, the BC Residency Act does not apply to any accommodation where the tenant shares bathroom or kitchen facilities with the accommodation's owner. So if you're going to be in that same space sharing common areas with your landlord, then it would not apply. There are also suites. So again, it could be a basement suite, but it's typically a self-contained room with a separate interior and exterior entrance in a house. So that kind of offers you a bit more privacy, but you want to make sure that you do know the rules of the house. Because for example, I lived in a basement suite in my first house when I came here, but there were rules that my landlord had that I had to be mindful of and follow those rules. So for example, there were rules such as no visitors after 10, no one sleeping over, no pets. So you want to know all of these rules prior to getting into an agreement. And if it doesn't align with what you're looking for, then definitely you want to be looking elsewhere if you have options to look elsewhere. I'll also place this link in the chat so you can have access to it. So just copy it and view it later on. And you can learn a bit more about the various options that are available to you. Next slide, please. Awesome. So before renting, again, some things that you need to know. Most importantly, what are the rules of the building or the property? And you want to ensure you're following those rules. Please do not break any rules. Because you will, if you do leave that apartment or house and go elsewhere, you will need references oftentimes. So you want to make sure that you're following the rules as much as possible so you don't have any disagreements with your landlord that may impact your ability to get a reference. As I mentioned earlier, you want to know if it's month to month or if it's a fixed length of time. So if you enter into a contract, say for a year, you will have to stay for a year. But most student-friendly options tend to be month to month. If it is a month to month, then you can leave at any time. In my case, I had to give a month's notice, which was fine, but you're not necessarily locked in for a certain period of time. So again, you want to make sure that you know all these things prior to renting. You want to know if there's parking available. Some places may have parking, some places may not. Some places may have parking, but you may have to pay a fee monthly or annually. So you want to make sure you know this because that is an additional cost to you. So you want to make sure you know how much money you have to spend each month. You want to know if they have storage. Sometimes you have a lot of stuff, but not sufficient space. So is there additional storage that you can utilize? And if yes, is it included or if it's an additional cost? You want to know that as well. Is there laundry? Some places will have in-suite laundry, some places won't have laundry, and some places will have shared laundry, so you share with other tenants. So it depends on what you're looking for. Definitely you want to make sure you know that as well. And most importantly, are utilities included? I think a lot of times we do see persons who tend to have a mix-up here. So you want to make sure you know, is everything included? Sometimes it will say utilities included, but not all utilities. So are all included or not? Some you will see says, it will say that utilities are included. So that would be like hydro, heat, and water, but it may not include internet. So these are things that you want to be considering, because if utilities are not included, then of course, these are additional costs to you. So additional costs that you have to incur. So you want to be You want to make sure you know as much as possible what all your monthly fees will be. And also if you want to have an agreement with your owner of the property or a roommate. But if you do have that agreement, please note that the Residential Tenancy Act will not apply. So this is something that you need to be cognizant of. But definitely, if you can have an agreement, you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page prior to entering into that living situation. You also want to know about deposits. Most places will ask for a damage deposit, some probably won't. And many will also ask for a pet deposit if you're going to have a pet as well, because it is thought that your pet is likely to cause some damage in the apartment. So they do want that security if you're going to be moving in with a pet. And you also want to know if your agreement allows you to add a roommate without the landlord's permission, or this is something that you have to discuss with your landlord prior to doing so. Again, you want to make sure that you're following all the rules of the property as much as possible. Some landlords will have limitations. For example, as I did say earlier, my landlord did not want any additional folks to sleep over. So you want to make sure that you know all these things. So you're not bringing in someone in that space without permission, and then it's going to be a reflection on you. So you definitely want to make sure you know all these things prior to renting. Next slide, please. Righty. Okay, so the process. It is important to note that this process is not linear. It may take different forms, but it's just an idea of all the steps that you will need to go through when you are renting an apartment or home. So the first thing, of course, you'll need to do once you find that listing that appeals to you, you want to contact your landlord. They typically give you options that is more convenient to them, whether it be email or mobile. Of course, if you call them and you don't get them, you want to leave a voicemail, but make sure you leave a voicemail with contact details and not just say, hey, I'm interested in that listing, and that's it. You need to hopefully give them a way to contact you if you have it. And your name as well, and why you're calling, so they know, and they're not left guessing as to why you left that voicemail or why you called. And you also want to schedule an appointment to visit wherever it is that you want to be staying, so you can see. Of course, again, if you're going to be booking somewhere prior to arriving in Canada, you're going to forego this step. But if you're going to be here, then you, by all means, schedule an appointment so you can be there and see what it looks like in person. Please be sure to be on time. Sometimes when they have viewings, they tend to have multiple viewings lined up. And now in a COVID world, they do need time to be sanitizing in between visits. And there are many things to consider now, more so than before. So you want to make sure that you're on time. If it is that you are running late, say, for example, you missed a bus or you got lost, then definitely inform them. They'll either let you know that you can still come because they have the time, or you'll have to reschedule that appointment. So you want to make sure you're thinking about these things in advance. And ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You have a right to ask questions and know as much as you need to know about that space before committing to that space and paying your money. So you want to make sure you're asking questions about how much rent is, what do you have access to? Do you have access to the kitchen, the laundry area, utilities, parking? Is there a damage deposit included? You know, what is the agreement? You want to know all of these things. And again, of course, your questions don't need to be limited to these. You can ask any question that comes to mind that you need answered to ease your mind prior to entering into that agreement. So again, make sure you ask all those questions. And then your move-in date. It may be a case where you're moving out from somewhere and moving in, or it may be a case that you're just landing in Canada and you're driving directly to wherever it is that you rented. Typically, your move-in date is the same as your move-out date. So you definitely want to make sure you're coordinating properly. Most times they will ask you to move in on the first day of the month. It may differ from person to person, but these are some of the things that you need to know as well, so you can plan accordingly. You may need to rent a U-Haul truck. There are many things that go into moving. So you want to make sure that you have this information on hand so you can slowly work through that process. You don't want to pay cash when you're paying your deposit or your rent. Try as much as possible to do an e-transfer, or if you have checks, you can probably try that option as well. So you can have that paper trail that you did pay. There have been times when we know some students have paid cash. You definitely want to make sure you're getting that receipt. But if you do not need to pay cash, don't pay cash. And you also definitely don't want to pay without viewing the place. And again, I know we mentioned the whole idea of booking prior to coming. So of course, if that is the case, you will need to pay to secure that space. But if you don't feel comfortable, then do not pay and just find an alternative. If you feel comfortable, if you have spoken to the property manager or the landlord, whether you've done a Skype call, a Zoom call, a phone call, whatever it is to ease your mind, once you've done that, then you can go ahead and pay. But if you are having doubts, then I'd suggest not paying and then perhaps going that route of finding somewhere temporary, coming here and then doing this process. And then once you're here and the first time you enter, your landlord should do a walkthrough with you. So you guys are going to walk through that space to see if there are any nicks or damages that are already there. You want to make sure that your landlord should be making a note of it, but you want to also make your own notes. If you can take pictures, take pictures. If you can take videos. So you have your proof so that when you're moving out, a damage that was there prior to you moving in, you're not being held responsible for that. So you want to make sure that you have that proof if you can obtain that proof. And then lastly, you're going to be signing your contract again. It may go another way. You may sign your contract first and then do your deposit. It works in different ways. Again, it's not linear. But then you sign your contract. And of course, at this point, if you have any additional questions, if you read the contract and something seems out of place, please do question it. Don't just sign. I know some of us have a tendency to just skim through things and then sign it, but take your time and read it thoroughly so you know what you're agreeing to. And again, if you have any questions or any doubts, you can also reach out to us at Student Services and we'll try as best as possible to offer you some support. Righty. So your landlord will typically go through a process before renting somewhere to you. They will ask you for proof of identity that may be in any form, whether it be if you have a local ID, you can present that local ID, maybe your passport, entirely depends. They'll also check your references. Some persons are a bit more lenient in this process, especially when you're new to Canada, because you would not have had any references in Canada. Some persons will take references outside of the country, and some persons may not take references, but most times they do. So you want to make sure you have persons who are willing to be your reference. At Student Services, typically we don't operate in the capacity of being your reference. So you want to be thinking through these ahead of time and seeing who you can find who will vouch for you. They will probably reach out to your previous landlords as well to find out a bit about your rental history. So if they had any challenges renting to you, if they had any challenges with payment, these are things that most persons are going to want to know. They'll also do a credit check. Again, you have people who are lenient because if you're new to Canada, you won't have a credit history. So there won't be anything to check. So definitely they may be a bit understanding on that front, but they will probably want to confirm. So if you're working, they'll probably want to confirm your income. So they may ask for like pay stubs or, proof that you're working. I've seen some go as far as to call your place of employment to confirm that you are in fact employed and ask a bit of questions. So that's something that is going to happen. You want to also give your manager a heads up so they can know that that's going to be happening. And then they're going to want to know how many people are living there and also get the names of the persons living there. Oftentimes, those names may be included on the contract as well that you will be signing. And average rent. So again, this is an average. It may be more, it may be less, depending on where you're renting and what's included. So the first tier you see here is of course the cheapest. So you will have homestay options or a room to share or a studio that will fall in this bracket, which is $600 to $1,000. But also it doesn't mean that all studios are, well, most homestays may fall in this category, but for studio apartments, for example, you'll also notice it's on the second tier because you do have studio apartments that are above $1,000, typically ranging anywhere from $1,000 to $1,600. I am yet to see a studio apartment that goes above $1,600 in Victoria, not to say it doesn't exist. You may also be able to get 1-bedroom apartments or suites in this range, a condo, and maybe even a house in this range. Now, if you jump to the next tier, you realize that you see studio here as well. Now, I have seen studio apartments in, for example, Vancouver that have been over $1,600. Again, not to say that it won't be the case in Victoria, just speaking from my experience, and Viral can share a bit about his when he gets a chance. And then you can also get 2-bedroom apartments in this range. So if you're coming with your family, you may be considering a 2-bedroom apartment, or you may find a 2-bedroom apartment that's really great in a really great location, on a good bus route route in one of the cities close to the university. But you're just one person. At that point in time, you can definitely reach out to maybe a classmate or a schoolmate to see if there's anybody who'd like to rent with you, so you can split that in half. And you also find condos and houses in this price range. So I've been talking enough. I will turn it over to my colleague Viral, who will start talking now and share a bit more information with you guys. And I see some questions coming into the chat that we'll address later on, but do keep those questions coming if you have them. And over to you, Viral.
Thank you so much, Donneil. I was just hoping that you will continue and end this session, but thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for sharing the valuable information. And I am going to talk about the resources right now. So there are, as you can see on the screen, there are some resources which we provide to the students when they get admitted in the university. We just follow up with them. We also share the same resources during the workshop Off-Campus Housing 101, which is available on the RRU website. And it's a database, but there will be we don't manage. It's basically the landlord puts the information on the website. Also, we advise the student to check the marketplace, which is on the Facebook. The third resource is Use Victoria or Kijiji or a Craigslist or a PadMapper. Definitely, you will find the places there. The Victoria Real Estate Board Rental and the Property Management, that we have the real estate or the board rental property management. You can reach out to them, which is Pemberton Homes, D1 Properties, Proline, and more. There are more to it. Send an email to them if you're looking for an apartment or 2-bedroom apartment or 3-bedroom apartment. They will find a place, and that's one of the safest. You will not be scammed, but definitely you will find a place, and they will have a virtual tour. The Canada Homestay Network is not managed by the university, but it's a third-party organization where you can definitely reach out to them. They have the online application form. It can be an homestay, and I'm going to share more about the Canada Homestay Network if you're planning to register with them. But very, very important thing, how to avoid the rental frauds, the scam, which we inform or which we advise the students during our housing workshop. And a few things to know is never deal in cash or urgent demand for cash deposit. What it means is if you're in contact with the landlords through email, and they may tell you, the place is available, I'm outside the country, the key, you will get it from here, please transfer the money into my account. Don't fall into it. Don't transfer any money before viewing the place. Even if the landlord says you can go around the building, you can find a place, that's the building and the apartment, we cannot show you the house. No, don't fall into that. View the place. You have to walk into the house, check the bedroom, check the electrics, all the tools and the resources if they are working. So please never deal in cash and do not transfer any money. Demanding a written list. So basically, lease, it's basically landlord will say sometime we don't need to worry about the lease and it's all okay. Don't fall into those scams. Always sign the lease, always read the agreement, and that is important. And as I said, read the lease before signing, because one thing you need to know is on the lease is to make sure that if you break the agreement, what are the consequences. So that is the key information. So please read the agreement. If it is not mentioned in the agreement, have a word with your landlord. Meeting the landlord in person. Due to COVID-19, it is not possible, but definitely I would advise you to have a virtual tour or connect with the landlord on Skype. Even if you're not in Canada, send an email to them and let them know if it's okay to have a Skype meeting or a Zoom meeting. Speak with the current tenants. So if if there was someone who was staying before you, then please reach out to them and ask for his or her experience, and that will give you some more information if you're going to stay with the landlords. Request for too much information. So if the landlord is going to ask you for too many information, it might not be a good place for you to stay. So just try to avoid and look for a new place. Listing photos are suspicious. It's very common. You will see the apartment, you will see the condos, but the location might not be accurate. So that's not the that's not the real information or the real place. So try to avoid those things. If you're not sure, you can have the conversation, and at any point if you feel that this place is suspicious, just turn away, just walk out from that. Don't have any further conversation with them. Sometimes you will get an email which might be very good for you. You may say, you know what, this is the place, it will work for me. Don't fall into that. Be very careful. Sometimes it might be a phishing email or it might be a scam. Inconsistent rent pricing. If you see the pricing is in that area, as we had shared with you, it will be somewhere between 600 to 2000, and for like 600 to 1000 for a one condo. And if someone is charging you $2000, please check, like look into the different websites, if the pricing are different or if it's the same. If you're not sure, connect with us. Please talk to us. Let us know if we can help you, or we can clarify, or we can give you some more information or the resources that will help you to make a good decision. Obscured landlord identity. If sometimes the landlord might be staying in the renting apartment, so they may charge you more. So make sure that you don't fall into that trap. Always check the place belongs to the landlord. You don't want to fall into that agreement too. These are the three things which we share with our students always: is starting a tenancy, during a tenancy, and ending a tenancy. It is important to know what you before you start a tenancy, what are the things, what are the questions you have, what are the questions you need to ask to the landlord or before signing the contract. And while you're staying in the apartment, condos, or house, what you need to take care. And even if you end the contract or when you end the tenancy, you need to find out what is your moving what is the date where you need to which you need to move out, because it is important. If you plan to move out on a different date, then your landlord may charge you your rent, or may charge you some extra money. So please have those conversations with your landlord before, during, and ending what you need to know. These are some quick tips which we had already shared, but just want to advise the students, like giving a notice to end a tenancy. So if you decide to end the tenancy or break the contract, please read your contract. There is a possibility that if your contract says that if the landlord cannot, or if the landlord cannot find someone else, then you have to pay the rent for the next few months. So make sure what does the agreement says, and also the landlord entering the unit. So there is a possibility landlord may enter the unit, but it needs he will notify you, and at least 24 hours before moving or out, do an inspection with the landlord. Very key information. Paying rent on time. Please pay your rent. Please pay the rent on time. If it's going to be late, you need to understand what is the policy and have a word with the landlord if there is any grace period. Quiet enjoyment. Tenant must not interfere with or disturb another occupant or neighbors or the landlord. So the landlord may expect someone who is quiet, and as well as who can have is not making lots of noise, or is not disturbing the community people. Then repairs and maintenance. If anything is broken, please connect with your landlord. They will fix it for you. If you break it, you have to let the landlord know. Safety. Change the locks when a tenancy starts. So if you want to change any of the locks, you have to let the landlords know. Security and pet damage deposit, which has been shared by Donneil, so I'm not going to take that. Solving problems and dispute resolution is very important. If there is any conflict, please try to resolve it on your own, and then if it still doesn't resolve, then you can file the complaint. There is a tenancy agreement. Landlord must give a copy of the agreement. So please make sure that when you sign a contract, you should have a copy of the agreement. Solving problems, as I said, if there is a dispute, you can try to resolve it between both the parties. If still it doesn't go, then please reach out to the BC tenancy. You can apply for dispute resolution, and whatever decision and the orders which comes out, those are final, and both the parties has to agree. Make a direct request to end make a direct request is an alternative options for the landlords ending a tenancy for unpaid rents or utilities. So there is a possibility that if you don't pay the rent, the landlord can come in and he or she can end the agreement too. Again, university staff and the faculty, we cannot represent or resolve the dispute. Please contact BC Residential Tenancy Branch for any further help you need. But you can please talk to us that whatever problem you're facing, we will guide you in the right direction. We'll share some resources with you. The Canada Homestay Network, as we were talking about it, you need to understand the meal plan for the full board, half board, bread and breakfast, room stays, and as well as room holds. They will give you some more options on number of meals or type of meals, as well as some notes. Very important if you are going to take if you're going to be in the full board where you need 3 meals per day or breakfast, lunch, and dinner, please have a word with the landlord what will be your meal, because generally the meals will be egg or muffin or bread or butter. It might not be your homemade food or authentic traditional food. So please have a word with your landlord. We don't want you to suffer. So that's the key information. I will share it with you. But again, if you have any questions, we will do the housing workshop info sessions once you join the Roll Roots University. And the agreement with the room rates, which my colleague had already shared, we advise the students to stay with the roommates, because that gives the opportunity for to know each other, as well as consider the roommate agreement, that is rent, utilities, and if there is any obligations. That's the end of our session. Lots of information. Thank you so much for listening to us, and now we can take the questions. Andrea, you want to go forward?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for all the details and so much great information that if you are moving or you're brand new in Canada, it will be so important for you to know before you choose the housing for the time you are going to be in Victoria or you are going to be in Canada. We have a few questions. I just want to be mindful about the time. We might be able to cover all of them, but the next session starts in 4 minutes. So we will do our best to cover the questions. So the first question is about, could you provide any any recommendations for someone that is looking to move as a family? There are a family of 6 and they have 4 kids, and they're finding that it could be quite challenging to find housing currently in Victoria for a big family. Do you have any insights or any tips that you can share with this person?
I would say Victoria Real Estate Board Rental and Property Management. Connecting with them would be the best, because they can find a place for family size of 6. I have 4 kids under 12. Yeah, there should not be any problem. Definitely connect with the rental property, and as well as you can check the marketplace or use Victoria. There is an option to filter and choose to find a place for you. If you struggle, as I said, we are there to help. Connect with us, and we do sometimes Zoom sessions with the students on how to look for housing.
Thank you so much. And that question was from Mohammed. Thank you so much for asking that question. When do students receive that student pre-arrival guide that you were chatting about it?
Donneil?
Yeah, so I know typically international admissions would send it. I'm not sure if they still do, but we also share it in so when we send our first email to new students, we also add that into it. So if you don't get it from international admissions, you will get it from us. And it's going to be on our website as well. We're just tweaking it. I can't tell you exactly where on the website it's going to be right now, unfortunately, because we are in the process of getting an amazing new website. But we will be sharing that in many places once we do update that, so you can know where to find it online as well.
Thank you.
Andrea?
Yes.
Do we still have time?
We have 2 minutes. And
can I take all this question?
Which way? Yeah.
I have all the questions in my chat box. I can quickly go through it.
Oh, absolutely. If you can read it and then.
Okay, I'll just answer Gonzalo's question. Yes, you can do the.
Sorry, can you ask the question so people know which question are you answering? Thank you.
I won't be working since I expect to be fully focused on studying, but I will I will bring funds to pay for at least 1 year of accommodation. Is that still acceptable for landlords? In that case, is it recommendable to pay for more than 1 month in advance? Yes, have a word with the landlord and have an agreement on it. Whatever money you pay, you need to have a receipt on it. So those discussions, or sometimes you may get the place, but have a word with the landlord.
I think, Viral, we might have to stop there. Just we have to get the next team ready to the presentation. But thank you so much, Viral. And thank you so much. This was such a fantastic presentation. Thanks so much, Donneil. You shared so much insights about what people can expect when they're looking for housing. And if you have any questions or we were not able to answer your questions, please reach out to the team and they will be more than happy to assist you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.